Christian Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Desperate Prayers, Embracing the Power of Prayer in Life's Darkest Moments by Rachel Wojo. Narrated by Rachel Wojo. Dedication. Dad, you taught me to work hard, modeled a life of loving all types of people, sent me to college though you'd never had the privilege, sacrificed to prioritize your family's needs, and fostered a deep love for God's Word through your example. To say I am grateful is not enough. All my love until we meet again. Introduction. Not everyone has $5,000 in answered prayers dropped in their backyard. I can hardly believe that I did. Have you ever wondered if God answers prayers today? Does He still work miracles in people's lives like He did in the Bible? You know, the classic stories, the Red Sea rescue, Daniel in the lion's den, Jonah in the belly of a whale. Moses, Daniel, and Jonah experienced big answers to big prayers, but ordinary everyday people who live in the 21st century, could we possibly see answers to our prayers? And why doesn't God answer yes to every request? I've heard the statement, there are no big sins and little sins. All sin is sin. Does that mean there are no big prayers and little prayers? Does God see all requests at the same level? What constitutes an urgent prayer on God's timetable? I don't know about you, but my sense of urgency rarely matches God's. I'm like a toddler on the verge of a potty accident. Daddy, now! Especially in out-of-my-control circumstances. When we can't see that a solution is on its way, our minds spin with confusion. Desperation ushers in pain and grief soon follows. We plead with God, "Where's my miracle?" The more I have studied the Bible, the more I've realized the men and women who cried out to God in deep despair echoed the cries of my own heart. Amid the words and groans of anguish, I discovered that frenzied desperation could be transformed into dependent faith. If you chose this book because you're pleading with God for an answer to your prayers, then you're in the right place. Would you recognize your miracle if it came packaged a little differently than you anticipated? Over the decades, God and I have wrestled through many desperate seasons together. The big D spaces of discouragement, depression, divorce, disease, and death are personally painful and familiar places I've discussed with Him. I've experienced miraculous answers and questioned why other prayers seemingly went unanswered. Through it all, I've learned that difficult circumstances can prompt divine conversations with a life-altering perspective. My prayer for you as you listen to this book is that you'll begin to recognize and embrace God's peace, presence, and power in your prayer life as desperation fuels your dependence on Him. Chapter 1. The Cry of Distress. God, see me. A ping rang out as I swiped the dish towel across the final dinner plate, and an unknown number popped onto the screen. I glanced at the text. Rachel, you don't know me, but a friend has left a gift for you. Please go to your backyard and look for a yellow envelope underneath the green balance beam. My mind raced with possibilities, most of which were negative. Dare I open the back door? Maybe I should grab the pepper spray first. Yet a sense of peace settled over my heart. This wasn't your typical click here and win $1 million hoax. Whoever had sent the text knew my number and my name. I slipped on my shoes and cautiously walked across the patio toward the balance beam my husband Matt had made for our 2 youngest girls. The stars and landscape lighting created enough light in the gathering darkness to guide my steps. I grabbed the envelope and sprinted into the house straight to the garage where Matt was working. "Honey, read this." I shoved the phone toward him. His eyes flitted over the text, then met mine. Hands shaking, I ripped open the envelope to find a typed letter. Matt, Rachel, and family. The angel of the Lord found you in the wilderness. Genesis chapter 16, verse 7. Our Lord sees you. Nothing escapes his notice. Know that this is his provision. It is a demonstration of his faithfulness, a reward for your faithfulness. That was it. Typed, no name, no signature. In addition to the letter, the yellow envelope held a bank envelope. My heart pounded at its thickness. I tore open the seal, and our heads spun at the stack of cash that spilled out. I'd never held that much money in my entire life. Someone surely left us a lot of money. As I fanned the bills, Matt and I realized only the first 5 were $20 bills. The rest were $100 bills, 49 of them. Someone had left $5,000 in our backyard, and I knew that someone was God. The wild, not-so-wonderful wilderness. Have you ever felt like you've been deserted in the wilderness? I don't mean the one with cacti and sand, but a season of life that left you in serious need, physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. Yep, I thought so. All humans on the planet experience desert places in our lives, but some seasons are incredibly rugged. In March 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit hard in the United States, thousands of people lost their jobs. Going without income, even for 2 weeks, would result in a significant financial setback for most people, but some folks went for months without paychecks. In my daily prayer time, I thanked the Lord that Matt, our children, and I were employed and earning income because I knew many weren't experiencing that kind of stability. In 2021, when many of those unemployed people returned to the workforce, Matt came home from work as usual. But after just a bite or two of dinner, he said, "I have something I need to tell you." From the moment he had walked in the door, I could sense he was discouraged. His eyebrows alone revealed this wasn't going to be good news. The words tumbled out of his mouth. "I was let go today." Shock and disbelief hit me like a tsunami. Why? How? My husband is hardworking in everything he does. This happens to others with poor work habits or unstable environments, or so I thought. But it had never happened to us, not even through the first months of a worldwide pandemic and statewide economic shutdown. After a flash of thoughts, unexplainable peace washed over my heart. Then finally I managed to say, "I don't understand it, but somehow I know this is part of God's plan." For more than 2 years before that moment, I had prayed for a new job for Matt. The daily corporate environment and challenges of his industry stressed him beyond what he should be enduring. Often I begged the Lord to move him. Maybe you're thinking, "Rachel, do you really think your husband getting fired was an answer to prayer?" Yes, I do. I'm typically low-key until you mess with one of the people I love. Then mama bear mode unleashes. I didn't know I possessed an internal mama bear until I had my first baby. I quickly discovered God equips parents with a sixth sense that spreads from parenting to protecting anyone we love. I felt certain that God had allowed this job termination because of the peace I felt in my heart about it. I believe God answered my prayer through this strange, challenging circumstance because Matt and I had been praying for a miracle when it happened. Dictionary.com defines a miracle as an extraordinary event manifesting divine intervention in human affairs. Miracles are out-of-the-ordinary circumstances. My husband had never been terminated from any position he'd ever held before. My choice to believe God worked in our lives through that circumstance was made in faith. God and I had enjoyed a proven prayer relationship for more than 2 decades at that point. He orchestrated details in my life, then gave me a front row seat to watch miracles unfold. While this job loss was not my preferred answer, I felt confident He had answered prayer through this strange situation. That day launched a wilderness season for our family that lasted 8 months before Matt landed temporary employment. Who can go unemployed for that long without profound impacts? We had 5 kids at home to feed and clothe. There are little things called mortgages, car payments, and utilities that don't care what else is going on. So although my initial response to Matt's announcement was peace-filled, my faith wanted legs to stand on. Something tangible I could touch with my hands and see with my eyes. God and I chatted about that job loss, but initially it wasn't an amicable conversation. I did most of the talking and, sobbing. I'm so glad that God is okay with ugly crying. Thankfully, He carried the weight of listening. In my heart of hearts, I wanted to know that God saw our family in that unexpected and empty place. The need to be seen. I've watched my husband teach our children to ride a bike. That special moment when they realize they can pedal independently and keep their balance is priceless. My youngest daughter didn't want anyone to help when it was her turn. Rather than accept her daddy's support while she practiced, she procrastinated. She must have grown tired of our encouragement to learn because 2 months after she turned 6, she went out to the garage and jumped on the bike. Once she started pedaling, she didn't stop. Shocked, I managed to catch the show on video. She looked like she had known how to ride a bike her entire life. Her bright eyes met mine with a huge smile, and she yelled, "Mom, look at me!" It wasn't enough for her to enjoy the moment on her own. She needed to be seen. Humans need to feel affirmed in their pain or pleasure. Helen Keller once said, "I would rather walk with a friend in the dark than alone in the light." Imagine how well she understood this, having been both blind and deaf since she was 19 months old. The need to be understood and accepted lies at the forefront of our emotional well-being. As humans, we crave validation. When circumstances spiral outside our control, we throw baseline prayers of, "God, do you see me? Do you know what is happening down here?" We strive to have Him recognize our situation and emotions, whether we are angry, hurt, or frustrated. Our natural bent toward resolving a conflict is the same intuition that rises in times of fear. We want to get out of distress, and basic instinct kicks in. We can choose to stand and fight or run in flight. Genesis chapter 16 explains Hagar, an enslaved Egyptian woman, faced this same choice and ran. Her mistress, Sarah, who was infertile, had forced her to sleep with her husband, Abraham, and Hagar became pregnant. Hagar resented her owners, and the situation spiraled downward like a reality TV show. Sarah mistreated Hagar, so she ran away to the wilderness of all places. Can you blame her? Imagine Hagar's emotions, including loneliness, shame, and rejection, and possibly rage as well. An angel of the Lord found Hagar by a spring in the desert, and the first thing he asked was her name. "Hagar, where have you come from? Where are you going?" Why is it unusual that the angel called her by name? In Genesis chapter 16, verses 1 through 3, we read that each time Sarah or Abraham refers to Hagar, she is called my slave or your slave. Not once is she called by her name. Her owners considered her property, not a person. What a beautiful moment for Hagar to be called out personally by the angel, an elevation from a possession to an individual. How special to be recognized as more than the label she carried. Interestingly, she only answered one of the angel's questions. Where have you come from? I'm running away from my mistress, Sarah, she said. She most likely didn't answer the second question, where are you going, because she didn't know. She had no plan. She was simply running. Do you see yourself in Hagar? Maybe you think of yourself as the roles you fill, and you long to be seen as more than John's wife or Susie's child. You carry many labels and wear multiple hats, but deep within, you long to be known. You want to be recognized for who you are. Who are you then? You are a child of the Most High King. God created you as a unique individual for a specific purpose. There is only one of you in the whole wide world, and only you can do the job for which God created you. God knows every hair on your head, and your name is engraved in the palm of His hand. Every time you call to Him in prayer, He calls your name as the angel did to Hagar. He says, "There you are. I'm so glad you've called." Your cry does not go unnoticed. Just as the Lord saw Hagar's situation, He sees the challenges you and I face today. The angel followed his questions by giving Hagar news I doubt she wanted to hear. Go back. I would have had a few choice words with an angel if he told me to return to a situation where I was being mistreated. However, there's no record of Hagar's objection. Whether or not her heart was at peace with them, she followed the angel's instructions. Drama over, right? No. Genesis chapter 21 tells us Hagar lands in the wilderness again. Can you relate? When familiar, distressing circumstances have arisen, have you ever prayed, God, why am I in this situation again? I wonder if Hagar thought the same. This time, Abraham had sent her packing because Sarah did not want her son to share an inheritance with Hagar's son. Not only was Hagar in despair over still being mistreated, now she was also responsible for her son. When the water she had taken with her into the wilderness ran out, so did Hagar's strength. She left her boy under a bush and turned away because she could not watch him die. So he was crying, and I bet she was crying too. Have you ever passed a mama in the grocery store whose child is wailing to the stars? She looks like she wants to break down in tears too, right? Hagar's prior wilderness experience repeated itself when the angel showed up again. We don't know if Hagar's cry of distress began as a few words thrown upward in prayer, or if all she could do was cry without spoken words. We're not privy to the exact details of her prayer, nor whether she even uttered one. But we know she cried in pain, her son cried, and God heard them both. I imagine Hagar must have been reminded of her earlier wilderness experience when the angel told her to name her son Ishmael, meaning God hears. It's easy to use desperate cries to God as last measure prayers. You've heard it said, all we can do is pray. When those words come out of my mouth, I immediately feel conviction. I want to replace that phrase with, the best thing we can do is pray. While I know there are situations when there is nothing we can do in our human strength, and prayer is our only option, I don't want to think of talking to God as a last defense. Prayer is the first pick, not the final straw. Rather than feeling all I can do is pray, I want to remember that prayer is one of the strongest tools in my spiritual arsenal. But in Hagar's example, we see no condemnation for her outpouring to God. There was no buck up and dry the tears speech from the angel. No, the angel was there to give her a personal message of affirmation. Whenever she would call her son to meals or tuck him into bed at night and whisper his name, she would be reminded, God hears me. His ear is ever tuned to listen for my cry and move to action on my behalf. Hagar memorialized her first angelic encounter with the name of her own choosing. From that moment on, she referred to God as Elroy, the God who sees me. This woman had experienced being heard and seen by her Creator and no longer questioned his existence. Her cry for help resulted in a deeper relationship with him. Not only did she realize that God saw her, but she also knew that she had seen God. Genesis chapter 16, verse 13. Hagar is the only person in the Bible to use this intimate name for God. How special is that? I wonder how long it would have taken for Hagar to feel heard and seen if she hadn't met God in the wilderness. 911 prayers. When my husband came home without a job, I knew the temptation I faced. Like Hagar, I wanted to run. Not from my husband, family, home, or God, but from God's call on my life to write for him. Writing is hard work, and contrary to popular belief, it's not exactly lucrative. For the last 2 decades, every time our family has faced a financial issue or setback, the enemy whispered, just get a real job. Clock in, clock out, get paid, and enjoy the benefits. You won't have to worry about creating a steady entrepreneurial income or the next book contract. It will be easier. But I knew that God had heard me whenever I cried out to him in the past. He knew about the job loss before I did. Like Hagar in the wilderness, I longed to see him working through our family's dilemma. Desperation filled my heart, and I asked the Lord to transform the distress into fuel to pursue him more deeply. I needed to hear his voice, providing direction and guidance for daily living. I'll confess that my prayers resembled 911 prayers. When you dial those 3 numbers, you aren't thinking about how that call will make you feel. You just want help and help now. But the 911 operator who receives your call has a job to do when you dial in. First, she must establish a connection with you and immediately say something like, I am here with you. Her job is not to solve the emergency in one sentence. Her priority is to establish a connection as she dispatches the proper responder so she can help until the first step of the solution reaches you. Confirming that we are not alone is central to handling the emergency in a crisis. Dr. Henry Cloud says, when we are afraid, the first thing that calms the brain down and reduces stress is a feeling of connection which assures us that we are not alone. Hagar dialed God's crisis hotline, and God didn't give her immediate deliverance. She wasn't removed from her challenging situation. Instead, the angel told her to return to Sarah, where she would face the same emotions that she felt before leaving. She would have to deal with her mistress's jealousy and ill will. Her circumstances didn't change, but her outlook did because God saw her. Suddenly, she was equipped to move forward because she realized that the God who heard and saw her was also with her. Whatever your emergency, God is your eternal 911 operator, always by your side. Take your first measure of comfort in that. Then, throughout your crisis, you can rely on his presence as faithful and true. God sees you. He hears you, and he knows your need. He knew you even before he fashioned your body inside your mother's womb. Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 5. He is with you in your wilderness. When Hagar wound up in the wilderness for a second time, child in tow, it had to feel like deja vu. This again? Really, God? While the Bible only describes weeping as her response to a second-time wilderness experience, the God who had seen her the first time heard her the second time, and he did the miraculous. He opened her eyes to see water in the wilderness. The water, what she needed to survive, was available all along. She just hadn't seen it. Did the tears in her eyes block the view of an oasis? Had the sense of being overwhelmed by her circumstances prevented her from seeing the provision God had prepared for her? We don't know from reading the passage, but I know what happens in my heart and life, and I'm guessing it happens to you too. I start to feel like God doesn't see me because there's distance between us. Maybe I've been upset over my circumstances and my anger has separated me from my Heavenly Father. Or perhaps it wasn't anger, but discouragement or worry or fear. These emotions can cloud my vision or block my view too. So while He is the God who sees me, I am the one who can't see Him. I call this spiritual separation anxiety. Like a preschooler, I want to step into the classroom without letting go of my daddy's leg first. So when he places me in uncomfortable situations that stretch my faith, I grow afraid and wonder where God is. I forget His promises, like, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Fear grabs hold when my feelings and faith collide. Choosing our responses at those moments is critical. What if we could pause and, like Hagar, remember El Roi, the one who sees us? What if we ask God to open our eyes wide to get a glimpse of His preparation and provisions for us? Remembering His promise to hear us when we call would refresh our hearts amid crises. Even when our eyes are closed, God sees us. The $5,000 drop. Yes, I knew God had placed it on someone's heart to drop $5,000 in our backyard. I don't bank on that ever happening again, but I never want to forget it. Since I don't have a child to name Ishmael, God hears, I did something else to help me remember God's provision in the wilderness. In my home, between the gathering room and kitchen, there's a small partial wall. When I'm standing by the kitchen sink, as I do many times a day, I can see throughout the main floor of the house. Matt hung a word vinyl on that little wall. Any guess what it says? The angel of the Lord found you in the wilderness. When desperation strikes and provision is scarce, know that God sees you. He hears you. He knows your need. No prayer is beyond God's reach or reply. There is no prayer too desperate to be heard by Him. Here's a prayer to close the chapter. God, see me. God, help me to trust that you see me. Thank you for being in control and for never leaving me alone. I trust you as my creator. Be my 911 operator and guide. Open my eyes to see your preparation and provision in this present wilderness. Here are 5 prayer principles to recap chapter 1. God will not allow your wilderness to go unnoticed. Prayer is the strongest weapon in your spiritual arsenal. Whatever your emergency, God is your eternal 911 operator, always by your side. Even when our eyes are closed, God sees us. And finally, no prayer is beyond God's reach or reply. Chapter 2. Too bitter to swallow. God, hold me. She gasped for breath for 4 days, and I could barely catch my own through the pain of watching her suffer. A few weeks before these final moments, I recognized that after 22 years of neurological degeneration, Taylor's life had neared its end, but there was no way to fathom just how hard my daughter would battle to keep going. She had fought for each day of her entire life and died the same way, giving it her all.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?